Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop. All the news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's the host.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Alpha Woolen, and I'm your host this evening for the Inside Scoop. I'm really excited for this show. We have with us Delegate Garrett McGuire, who is going to share his background and vision for HD 17. So let's just jump into it. Delegate McGuire, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me, Alpha. And I would be remiss if I didn't start by saying hi to my two daughters who told me to say hi to them. Hi, Sloan. Hi, Lily. But I really appreciate your invite and being here tonight.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you won a special election in December 2025. So let's just kind of jump into that. Like, what was that? Like, it was around Christmas. It was like, it happened so quickly. What was the energy around that?
It was a wild time. When a new governor comes into office, oftentimes she will, or he, in this case she obviously, will select current members of the General Assembly to serve in their cabinet.
Right.
Mark Sickles was selected as Secretary of Finance. That announcement came very late in December, which kicked off a firehouse primary to fill that seat. So I announced on Christmas Eve. My daughters did not care. They just wanted to know if Santa Claus was still coming.
I bet.
And 5 days later, I was the Democratic nominee and then won the general election in January. So it was a whirlwind for our family, but we adjusted. Got down to Richmond. I tell everybody, my colleagues got 60 days, I got 53, but I still feel like I was there to make an impact and get good things done.
For sure. Now, you didn't just hear that Mark Sickles is going to join the Spanberger cabinet and just said, okay, I'm just going to jump into civic engagement. Like, what's your background? What led you to where you are right now?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that question. So for 2 years, I chaired the Fairfax County Community Services Board, which is our local agency here in Fairfax County that does all of our mental health, substance abuse, behavioral health, developmental disabilities, services to those in the community that need them. I was on that board for 6 years as Supervisor Stork's appointee. So I had been involved in some of the ongoings within the county, especially in that topic. And actually, there was a big working relationship between myself and the state and General Assembly on what they were trying to do, what funding we were getting at the local agency to be able to implement our services. I was chair at the latter half of COVID. As we all know, there was a huge spike in mental health and everybody looking for services. So we also had a historic staffing shortage at the time. So I got a pretty good idea of what public service looked like during that time. I also chair the board of United Community, which is one of the largest nonprofits along the Route 1 corridor. We do a ton with human services. And so those two things, coupled with just my upbringing of, hey, give back, see how you can help people, I said, let's give it a shot. Yeah. So here I am.
Where are you originally from?
I actually grew up in Washington, D.C., so just across the river.
A D.C. native?
Yes,
gosh.
I know. I did the reverse transplant.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was the long and short of your civic engagement. So you decided, like, hey, I can really make an impact here. Didn't you have some experience with the Sickles office for a bit?
I worked for Eileen Filler-Corn, who was a former speaker. I worked for her for 3 years as her legislative assistant. So I knew how the General Assembly operated. I wasn't going in blind. Certainly have known now Secretary Sickles for a long time. And when I was with the CSB as chair, then Delegate Sickles chaired the Health and Human Services Committee in the House of Delegates, which was implementing and coming up with a lot of these policies that we were doing at the local level. So had a good working relationship with him. Kind of felt like this was maybe the next step to give back to my community. As I mentioned, I have 2 young daughters. I want to make sure that we're doing the things we can today to ensure that their future is bright and they have the same opportunities we do. And so that's why.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, so before we jump into, because you've accomplished a lot, like you said, in your 53 days.
53 days.
So you announced Christmas Eve, you got 5 days. What was it like when you found out, or I guess when you looked at VPAP or whoever your campaign manager was just like, you won?
Yeah, it was kind of like a moment of, oh my gosh, here we are.
Yeah.
And I'm actually going to be doing this.
Yeah.
So it was great. My wife has been super supportive, and her and I got to have a nice embrace of like, wow, we're going to do this together, and we're going to figure it out. And so, still trying to pinch myself sometimes of am I really here? But I feel like I've been able to catch up to speed really quickly and do the work that people expected me to do.
Awesome. So let's just jump in.
Yeah.
So one of the main things, maybe one of the first, just according to my recollection, you correct me if I'm wrong, but you really made strides with the gun legislation. What led you to champion that, and what was the process to get that across the finish line?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. So 19 years ago, I was a student at Virginia Tech on campus when a gunman entered one of our first classrooms and then academic buildings and killed 32 people. It was one of the most profound moments of my life, one of the most profound moments of Virginia Tech's history. And 19 years later, I find myself sitting in the House of Delegates still asking some of the same questions that we asked when that shooting happened. And so I thought, well, now I can get something done. Now I can do something about it. And so that's really where it started. It's from personal experience, like many of the legislative, initiatives that people come up with. It's from personal experience. I decided to look at what bills were already filed, which weren't. Like I said, I got there late, so I didn't have my pick. But there were 3 areas where I found that I could make a difference and really get good legislation through. And I happened to come in at a very opportune time when we had a Democratic House, a Democratic Senate, and a Democratic governor, the Democratic trifecta. We knew that, in years past, when some of these bills might end at the governor's desk and not become law, we could get them across the finish line and really improve the safety and lives of Virginians.
And share with our viewers exactly what your bill does.
Yeah, so 3 bills. The first one closes an unintended loophole in our background check system. So last year, a court case in Lynchburg opened up background checks on private firearm sales. So if you go to a gun store, that's usually considered a federal licensed firearm dealer. You would have to go through a background check system. Private firearm deal sales are your gun shows, private dealers out of their homes. We, for the last about almost 10 months now, have had a system where no background checks were being done on those sales. So anybody could go to one of those gun shows and purchase a weapon when they legally might not be allowed to because of a certain prior incident. And so I had legislation to close that loophole and reinstitute universal background checks in Virginia. I think that's a common sense thing. I think we've seen polling over the last 20 years consistently above 75%. This is just something that makes sense. The second one I did was around the open carry of certain assault-style firearms. So think about carrying an AR-15 in a farmer's market. We're going to say maybe that's not necessary. We delayed the effective date on that one until next year, but I think that's another just common sense, pro-safety gun violence prevention measure.
Wait, why was that delayed?
So we delayed it because we also did an assault weapon ban bill this year. And when you do a lot of these legislative efforts, you want to make sure all the definitions are aligned. Okay. And we noticed there was going to probably be an unintended loophole that we had in our bill for open carry that didn't quite mesh with the definition that we put in the assault weapon ban bill. So we just said, let's delay it till next year. We'll go into General Assembly session in January, get that fixed, and we'll be good to go come July 1st, 2027.
So language is really important in this space and legislation. Yeah. And so when you say unintended, was this bill something that the previous governor, Governor Youngkin, had the opportunity to pass?
Yes, it had been passed in previous General Assembly sessions. I will say we had a closer dive at it this time, knowing that we had a Democratic governor in office and we wanted to get it right. And that's what we want to do. We want to make sure our laws make sense and that we're putting things on the books that don't have unintended consequences. Currently in Virginia, there's actually 11 localities where you cannot open carry certain weapons in public areas. This was an expansion of that through all the localities in Virginia and really tried to hone in on the definition of those exact weapons. Okay. And that's where we kind of just got hung up on, one definition kind of had this certain language, ours had a different. We want to make sure they meshed. And by the time, they were getting ready to go into law, we caught it. We said, look, we'll just pump the brakes because we don't want to do anything that we didn't mean to do.
Gotcha. And I think that's so important because when we say common sense gun reform or gun control reform, but then there are loopholes that happen when you don't comb through legislation understand the loopholes, see what our blind spots are. So thank you so much for that work. Going back to what you mentioned about the first bill as far as folks that can manufacture guns in their homes, that is so important. In my work in Prince William County, there were 2 applications that came before the board, the local board there, for manufacturers, for gun manufacturer in their home, and it passed. So this is in our backyard that people, you know, that this type of legislation is working to make sure our neighbors, literally right next door, the people that we go to the grocery store with, the people that we go to the post office with, making sure that we are all safe. So thank you so much for that work.
No problem. And really it was a historic session and year for gun violence prevention measures. You know, myself had 3 bills, but several of the Fairfax County delegation to the General Assembly, several of those members also had really important bills. So I think people can feel proud about what we're doing down there in Richmond. Absolutely.
Kind of on the flip side of gun safety, there was some work that you did with the Huntington Metro. You wrote a letter to the Chief of Police in Fairfax County. Can you describe that a bit?
Yeah, sure. So Huntington Metro Station is really the northeast point of my House district, the 17th district. There's been a lot of things going on around that Huntington Metro Station for a number of years, whether it's crime, whether it's lost opportunities for development. And so recently I had constituents reach out to me about the rise in crime in the area. And I expressed that view to the Chief of Police, which I think is appropriate as an elected official to carry the voice of your constituents. And the Chief of Police and I had a very, very productive conversation around what they're doing, the efforts that they have in place. We were able to get a couple of new cameras put out in front of hotspots for crime so that there's kind of always eyes on the local area. And then building on that this year, we were able to get $10 million in the state budget to tear down what is now sitting there as a condemned parking garage. It's been there for about 10 years. It's structurally deficient. Everybody knows it needs to go, but we need the money to get it out of the way, and we can unlock significant development in Fairfax County right around that metro station, which is also going to be the starting point for the bus rapid transit that is going to run down Route 1. It will start at Huntington Metro Station. So this whole area is ripe for improvement, for development. I'm really excited because I think right now is when we're at the start of getting a lot of this done and coupling it with our neighbors' concerns and making sure that everybody feels comfortable in that area.
That is amazing. So folks, make sure you don't go anywhere. We are going to continue our conversation with Delegate Garrett McGuire, who is the delegate of House District 17. Stay right there, listen to these 2 minutes of public service announcements, and we'll see you then.
Every day across America, excess food is gathered by a network of good people at local food banks, giving hope to millions of children who struggle with hunger. They've earned their wings, and you can too. Together, we can solve child hunger. Support Feeding America and your local food bank at feedingamerica.org.
Hi, I'm Josh Temple. You might have seen me on TV where I help folks turn their houses into dream homes. But forget construction. Parenting is the toughest job there is. So when you need help or advice, turn to the parenting experts at Boys Town.
I was afraid of that.
Well, guess it's time to get you fixed.
Your pets will start fooling around sooner than you think.
Go on, get out of here!
Accidental litters lead to millions killed in shelters each year. Help prevent more. Fix at month 4.
Food. It nourishes, brings us together, and adds flavor to life. That's why it's important to wash hands, surfaces, and fresh produce. Keep raw meat, poultry, and seafood separate from ready-to-eat foods like fruits and vegetables. And cook to proper temperatures using a food thermometer. Enjoy and refrigerate leftovers within 2 hours. For more tips on safely preparing foods, visit homefoodsafety.org.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Thank you so much for staying here and watching the Inside Scoop as I continue our conversation with Delegate Garrett McGuire. I'm your host, Alpha Woolen, this evening. And so, Delegate McGuire, when we left off, you were talking about the victory that you won for the residents of so it's the city of Alexandria, right?
None of the city of Alexandria. It confuses people because we have Alexandria addresses,
right.
But we're all in the county. One of my good friends, Mayor Leah Gaskins of the city of Alexandria, would make sure I get that right.
I'm sure. Actually, while we're talking about it, so House District 17, can you discuss the boundaries?
Yeah, absolutely. So Huntington Metro Station, as I mentioned, is kind of the northeast point. If you go west from there, Springfield Mall is really kind of the northwest point, down to where Fairfax County Parkway meets 95, and then back up Telegraph Road around Hayfield High School and Kings Highway. So the Kingstown area, the Franconia area, a little bit of West Springfield, that really is kind of the heart of the district.
Gotcha. So everyone, you hear that. So if you live in that area, you have any problems, this is your guy. This is the person that you want to talk to.
Please reach out.
Okay. So when we left off, we were talking about the $10 million that you were able to secure for the Huntington Metro. But I think that kind of leads into a really good conversation on transportation and how just the processes around that. So can you discuss the whole budget process when it comes to transportation and what you're able to accomplish with that?
Yeah, and I want to thank Delegate Krizek and Senator Surville for the help with the Huntington Metro Station as well. It was a team effort. Transportation funding is very interesting because a lot of it actually. In Virginia, we've seen a lot of expansion of our toll roads, and those are public-private partnerships where the state actually does not have to put up money to build these roads. We enter into these partnerships, and then the private company puts up the capital and the investment, and they can recoup some of that revenue based on the tolling. We've found them to be successful. I know there's certainly people that have had headaches and heartaches with the pricing sometimes, but the numbers that have come back show that they are reducing wait times in traffic, both in the express lanes and in the non-express lanes. And remember, they are optional, so you don't have to use them. And so I think when we talk about long-term transportation ideas and projects in the Commonwealth, especially around the Beltway and 95, where we only have one direction of express lanes depending on the time of day. I think that's another option we're going to continue to look at. I know, for my district, the northern border is the south side 495 Beltway, right where pretty much the express lanes end to the Woodrow Wilson Bridge, which if you go there during the afternoon is not a fun experience. And so we are exploring ways to potentially open up a partnership that would bring expedited travel to the bridge, working with Maryland, working with the city of Alexandria, working with the Commonwealth and Fairfax County to make sure this makes sense, but also we want to give people options in the near future. And part of that is going to also be securing long-term commitments and investment in Metro. We want to make sure we are always investing in Metro. We were able to get $153 million in the budget this year to continue Metro operations. As you probably know, Metro is funded really from DC, Maryland, and Virginia, and we have to put up the money to make sure it keeps running. And so we held our part of the bargain this year and made sure we did that. As someone with 2 Metro stations in my district, I know how critically important that is for people, not only for getting home, but getting to work, getting to the city for entertainment, getting across not just the city, Northern Virginia, to the airport, to Dulles, to DCA. And so I think long term, we're going to be looking at really innovative ways to fund transportation so it isn't such a heavy reliance on the budget. And we're able to spend those dollars elsewhere, education, healthcare, which is continuing to take more and more of our state budget.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so interesting you mentioned, I can't remember the last time I've been on the Metro train. It's been at least 10 years because I didn't feel safe. So it feels good to hear that there are these investments are happening that across state boundaries, like you said, it's Virginia working with Maryland, working with DC, just to make sure that it's a solution that makes sense.
Yeah, I think WMATA has really done a good job over the last several years of improving the rider experience on Metro. I don't think you're alone in feeling some of those thoughts, but as someone who uses the rail system, I have seen that they have put a lot of time and effort and investment into ensuring safety on-time trains, and so we want to make sure we're going in that same direction and not, resting on our laurels or pulling back when we have it kind of at a good spot.
Absolutely. So did you outline all of your all of your priorities for Kingstown and Franconia and Route 1 when it comes to transportation?
Yeah, the only other one I'll kind of mention, it's not directly in my district, but it affects a lot of the commuters in my district, is the expansion of the Long Bridge Railway across from Long Bridge in Arlington into DC.
Okay.
Currently, there is a huge bottleneck of train service there with commercial trains, passenger trains. We're going to build an additional lane, which is really going to unlock a lot of opportunities, not just for the CSXs and Norfolk Southerns that use that to transport goods, but also VRE. And I think in the next 5 years, you're really going to see the opportunity for VRE to shine and become a reliable, constantly used transit system for folks in Northern Virginia. So I'm really excited about that. Again, we've got a couple years, give us some time, but there are good things in the works.
Absolutely. I think it's so important. I heard Chairman McKay say maybe a year ago that Northern Virginia, whether people like it or not, is the economic engine of the Commonwealth. But in order to make that happen, we have to have these infrastructure changes and updates to make sure that the entire state continues to benefit.
Right.
So,
and if we're going to build responsible housing, we're going to build more housing, we want to build it where people can move about easily, right? And that's why the Huntington Metro Station was so important to me, is that once we tear down that garage, we can build housing on that site. And so think about housing, mixed-use development right on top of a metro station that has easy access into the city, to the airport, the rest of Northern Virginia. I think it's a really great opportunity.
Yeah. Speaking of economic opportunities in Virginia, Virginia is for lovers, right? Virginia is also for lovers of money. Essentially, it is an economic engine, specifically when it comes to the data center industry. And so I would be remiss if you were here and I didn't ask you, what your perspective or how your perspective has grown as a delegate when it comes to the data center conversation.
Yeah. It's funny, I was at a conference recently that had state legislators from across the country, and all of them were talking about data centers with their hair on fire. And they looked at me like, well, does Virginia talk about data centers? I thought, oh, no, never, not us.
Right.
So, obviously a huge issue. And I think all the concerns that are out there are extremely valid, right? Like, we do not want to build these near homes. We do not want these sucking the energy out of our grid system. We do not want them taking away our water sheds. We don't want them running diesel generators. And so there's, this year in the General Assembly, we started or commissioned a brand new tax on data centers, basically for the fuel they emit. And that's the start of, I think, a very long-term focused process that is going to really determine where we go in the future with data centers in Virginia. And I think we can do it in a responsible way. If you are watching this show on YouTube, it is running through a data center, right? So we understand that they have an extremely important part of our economy, our daily lives, everything that goes around in the world. But we're not going to build them everywhere, and we want to make sure that they're paying their fair share, especially if we are having to inject new energy resources or build substations around them. Those costs should not be borne on the normal homeowner ratepayer. That should be a data center cost solely.
Absolutely. So when it comes to, as we were talking before the show started, like this is my nerd button that we've touched essentially. Yeah. As we said before, and as I've said to not only you but other people that I've spoken with, that there are absolutely blind spots. There are opportunities for improvement. There absolutely is a need for data center regulatory policy. But there are also economic benefits if done appropriately, if done right. There are localities in Virginia, I can't speak for any other state, but I'm sure I'm right when I say that there are education benefits, there are other community benefits. So do you mind talking a bit about the economic benefits?
No, I appreciate you bringing that up because there's a really large conversation right now on what is the future of data centers. Do we want to build any more? And that conversation has so many layers and levels that it's really hard to break it down. There are counties in Virginia right now currently recruiting and advocating for data centers to locate there. They see these as an opportunity to bring in revenue they haven't seen in 100 years. Mecklenburg County hadn't built a new school in 75 years. They brought in a data center. They used the revenue that was created from the taxing on that data center to build their first new school in 75 years.
Wow.
So their residents were pretty happy about that. You know, there are rural parts of the state that need help, and there's going to be a process and a method that makes sense for them to build things in their local community that maybe doesn't make sense for us in Northern Virginia. And I think we really need to let that play out on a local level, and let Fairfax County, let Loudoun County, let Prince William County, let Russell County, Lee County, wherever you might think, determine what makes sense for data centers in their community. And that a lot of that comes into play of how much land do you even have? Where are you building new homes? Where do you want to build new homes? Where are we going to build metro, right? And so this has to be a long thought out, very deliberate process that cannot be short-sighted.
So when it comes to, so when folks are concerned about, I mean, it is a multi-trillion-dollar industry, and Dominion Energy's role, I think it was called the Dominion's Rider T1 rate case. What are your thoughts on that? Yeah,
that's a great question. I think, you know, so I just wrote a letter to the State Corporation Commission about this, and I think the governor had a really well thought out, poignant decision on what she wanted to see too, and I kind of followed her lead a little bit. So this case right now before the SEC would determine, you know, if a data center is building a new substation or new transmission lines, who bears those costs? And we are telling the SEC and Dominion Energy that the data center should bear those costs. You know, right now the normal system is if you're building new transmission lines, that's an investment for Dominion. They can put it on a ratepayer's bill, and you probably won't see it, but over time that adds up. That should not be the case. If we're building specific transmission lines, specific substations for specific uses, then that specific case should pay for it. And that's kind of what I advocated before the SEC, is, you know, the residents of Kingstown, Franconia, Springfield, Huntington don't need to be paying for transmission lines running to data centers all over the state when we're not seeing any of those benefits.
Sure.
So that was kind of the impetus behind that letter, behind this case that is currently before the SEC, and where kind of Dominion and the next wave of energy policy in this Commonwealth is going.
And do you find that your partners within the General Assembly align with your thought or with your letter?
I think there were several of us that commented. I think you're probably going to hear more as the case continues to evolve. There's going to be a lot of things before the SEC in the near future that I'm sure a lot of people will have their eyes on.
Okay. So make sure you don't go anywhere. We are going to continue our conversation with Delegate Garrett McGuire as we're going to talk about data centers, and we're going to move on to the budget. So I'll see you after these PSAs.
Hi. Hoping for a crisp breeze to help keep you alert. Oh, he took a sip of water too. That'll probably help. You were probably going to turn down the radio too, so you could focus, right?
Probably okay isn't okay.
Right?
If you see a warning sign, stop and call a cab, a car, or a friend.
I think the water line is what really drove it home. I blew on him.
What's wrong with the world, mama? People living like they ain't got no mama. I think the whole world's addicted to the drama, only attracted to things that'll bring the trauma. Yeah, madness is what you demonstrate, and that's exactly how anger works and operates. Man, you gotta have love just to set it straight. Take control of your mind and meditate. Let your soul gravitate to the love, y'all. People killing, people dying, children hurt, and you hear them crying. When you practice what you preach, what you turn the other
Ma'am, you forgot your purse.
Oh, you don't know how worried I was. Thank you very much.
Hey.
Honesty. Pass it on.
Nice move, kid.
Donut? A message from the Foundation for a Better Life.
When I was your age, I was just like you, fascinated by stars. I get to search for life in the universe. And who knows, maybe life is looking for us too.
So we're like aliens to them?
Yeah. Does anyone want to be a scientist now?
I do.
Awesome. We need more girls in STEM.
Maybe we can find aliens.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Thank you so much for joining us back here on the Inside Scoop. So when we left off, we were talking about data centers, and Delegate McGuire, you were giving us kind of some inside baseball on the decision making and the importance of making sure this industry pays their fair share, but also there are nuances and as far as making sure this industry is a good partner and a good neighbor. But just kind of to close out that part of the conversation, the Dominion NextEra merger is something else that's on the mind of Virginia residents.
Yeah.
What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, I think, on surface level, I have some concerns. Part of the deal that was put out, the announcement was this $2.1-ish billion of money returned to ratepayers, of which I think about 1.76 billion would go to Virginians, because NextEra, has service territories in other states, so those ratepayers will get some of that too. I don't want that to be a talking point. I don't want that to be a bullet point and here's why you should approve us. I'd like to see some actual language and regulatory authority behind that number. Yeah. That's kind of right off the top. That was my number one concern. Secondly is NextEra. I don't know much about them. Dominion is who they are. We know who Dominion is, right? Everybody in this area has Dominion power. And NextEra, from what I can tell, has had some issues with ratepayers in Florida. They've had some issues with rising costs, and I really am concerned that that's going to come back here in Virginia. We already see a strain on our grid. We already see rising utility costs because of the data centers. We don't need to be adding extra burden to our ratepayers, especially at a time when everything is expensive. Healthcare rises, our healthcare costs are going up. Price of food, price of gasoline, everything is going up. We need to make sure our utility costs are constant and stagnant, and that we are investing in energy that is going to drive our state forward into the future and not give us an energy portfolio that looks more like the past.
That's right. So the reason that data centers are such a major part of the conversation is because of the economic impact they have the potential to have on a state government or state budget. So speaking of the budget, what priorities do you have for HD 17?
It's a great question. I mean, I think the feather in my cap, the big win was the money for the Huntington Metro Station. But we did a lot of really, really great things in the budget this year. A lot of things that are talked about and some that aren't. Of concern to me is childcare. When I talk about rising costs, let's talk about childcare for parents of young children. I know firsthand how much it costs to put 2 kids through daycare. It is a lot. And this year we were able to increase the amount that we are providing into the child care subsidy program to help offset some of those costs for folks. We also created a brand new fund that is going to be funded with seed money, $25 million, but is going to be a public-private partnership between the Commonwealth and businesses to pay into a fund where individuals can draw down and help offset child care costs. This is a huge first step in Virginia to go this way, and I want people to know this was advocated heavily by the business community. They were completely behind it. They understand that their workforce, their employees showing up to work, showing up on time, is often contingent on childcare, and we need to make sure people have affordable childcare options in the area. The other thing that was of concern to me, and I'm really glad we addressed it in the budget, are what I mentioned with the rising healthcare cost. We're going to see a huge impact from the One Big Beautiful Bill to what Virginians have as their own personal health care and what the state, the Commonwealth, is paying to help backfill the money that the federal government is no longer providing for Medicaid, for health care subsidies. So if the state doesn't pick up that gap, then people are really going to be in trouble, right? Our emergency rooms are going to be the new primary cares. So the state this year, we were able to put in a significant amount of money to help offset some of those costs in the near term. But this is an ongoing thing, right? And it's going to be a continued burden on states all over the country to find money to help make sure individuals have health care. It's crazy to say that in 2026, right? But I was really proud that as the Commonwealth, we were able to come together and say this is going to be a priority for us. We're going to fund it, and we're going to make sure people don't go without health care. So I would say that was something that really kind of I was helping behind the scenes advocate for and make sure we had included in our budget.
That's amazing, because the budget negotiations were like in the news every day for a while there. So what was going on behind the scenes?
Look, sometimes really good things take time, right? The slow process isn't that bad all the time. But there were some differences of opinion between the House and Senate. Obviously, I think those were widely reported on. But at the end of the day, we came to an agreement, with the governor as well, on what a prudent, fiscally responsible 2-year budget for this Commonwealth looks like at this moment in time, right? And each budget, I think people need to remember, is that moment in time. It's a snapshot of where we are fiscally, what's going on from the federal government that's going to impact our state costs, what are we having to pick up, where are localities feeling a strain, where are our revenue sources coming from, right? Are we having an economic development boom? Are we seeing a lot of business growth? Are we seeing people move out and therefore, you're losing revenue that way? So we were able to come together this year. It took a little bit longer than I think anybody wanted, but we got there at the end before we needed to, by the deadline, and came up with, like I said, a responsible budget that I think makes significant investments in education, $2 billion more than anybody was expecting. It's going to have an impact here in Fairfax County. The healthcare costs, like I mentioned, the child care. We made historic investments in our housing trust fund, building affordable housing in the state. We know about affordable housing in this part, this part of Virginia, but it's not just this part of Virginia. There's affordable housing issues across the Commonwealth, and we need to make sure that we have a housing trust fund that is up to speed, that is ready to meet those demands, and so we were able to do that this year as well. So I'm actually really proud of where we landed on the budget, even though it took some growing pains to get there.
Certainly. Did you find that, I'm sure you did, but did you talk to any constituents, or are there any particular stories that you have specifically when it comes to residents that were affected by this administration slashing jobs, essentially DOGE?
Yeah, unfortunately, yes. I have had one-on-one conversations, I've had roundtables, I've had town halls with federal employees who were let go, riffed for no reason, other than you were on the list today by somebody that didn't like you for some reason, right? And that's really unfortunate. It breaks your heart to see some of these folks really on the cusp of hitting their retirement mark, getting their pension, having to step out of the workforce, reevaluate who they are as a professional, where they want their career to go, what jobs are available for them. So that has been an extremely difficult part of the last 7 months as being a newly elected official, is hearing these stories about people who are having just an awful time through no fault of their own because of decisions made at the federal government.
I'll bring it home for you. So I was a DOGE employee. I was a government contractor. I worked for the Federal Aviation Administration, and specifically with the company that I worked with for NOTAMs. The NOTAMs system was named in one of the current president's executive orders. And literally, someone from the FAA called the vice president of my company and essentially said that if this administration finds out that a black woman is over our aeronautical information management systems, it's going to bring us undue attention, so replace her.
Yeah.
And so that is what happened. But I say that not to make anyone feel bad, but just to make sure that it's not something that we just see on social media.
Yeah.
It's not just something that we see on television, and it's not someone far away. Like literally anyone that you speak to in this area, there may be 2-3 degrees of separation as far as someone that's been impacted by what this administration is doing.
Yeah.
So how we vote and the decisions that we make at the ballot box, it really does matter.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry that happened to you, first of all. I mean, that's awful. One of the things I did not mention in our budget was a contingency fund for federal action, right? It's helping ramp up our workforce, bring in new job opportunities, do educational development and economic development to make sure that the impacts that the federal government is making on our communities especially, we could curtail it a little bit. And so the governor really made that a focus as well. I'm excited to see what happens with that money and see where we can help people. But it is an unfortunate thing right now, again, through no fault of anybody's, that they are in a situation they never thought they'd be in.
Yeah. But thank goodness that we have a good state government that is working to do it.
We're
Exactly, working to see what we can do to help your constituents. What committees do you serve on?
So I serve on the Health and Human Services Committee, which think healthcare, hospital systems, behavioral health, which I think is appropriate for my background. I serve on the Cities, Counties, and Towns Committee, which kind of oversees all local policy that the state gives or doesn't give. And then I serve on the Communication, Technology, and Innovation Committee, which is really the committee that's looking at a lot of the new kind of AI regulations, data privacy, things that are everyone's kind of grappling with at the same time of how we're going to regulate these emerging technologies into the future and protect us as Virginians.
Sure. Not very long ago, we mentioned the impact of Mecklenburg County essentially with when they brought in the data center. Not that we're going back to that part of the conversation.
I thought we were done.
But as it relates to education, what's been your priority when it comes to education?
So that's a great question. I have a 4-year-old and 2-year-old. You know, my 4-year-old is about to enter the public education system here in a short matter. I'm concerned that Fairfax County, you know, first kind of overarching, is being targeted by the federal administration on some of the things we're doing educationally. I want to make sure our education system, the Fairfax County public school system is fully funded, that we've got teachers that are getting the pay they deserve. We did a 4% increase for teachers this year in the budget. And then I want to make sure there's opportunities for each kid. You know, we have such a diverse community. We have such a diverse county. We have kids that are learning at all different levels, all different steps. One of the things that really concerns me is that 3rd and 4th grade reading level rate and what happens after that. We know from studies and from the numbers that if an individual isn't reading at the 3rd or 4th grade level by 3rd or 4th grade, their chances in the future of not even just graduating high school, but future success significantly diminishes. And so early childhood education is extremely important to me. I mentioned the child care investments that we made this year, but I want to make sure we are looking at what are we doing in kindergarten? How can we fund universal pre-K? I know that's always a magic, being in the sky, but that would be such a monumental thing for so many families in this area to give their kids the right start. Because if you don't get the right start, it's really hard to catch up. And also helping our immigrant and communities and our English as second language learners come in and not be hampered by policies that have been put in place by the federal government that are stagnating them, that are not allowing them to develop. So I got my eye on several things. I know that was a little bit rambly, but it is certainly of concern to me.
Thank you so much. Please stay around for these PSAs, and we'll be right back.
Nice going, Spencer. I can't believe we broke Old Man Hennessy's window.
Correction, dude. You broke. I just threw the ball.
This is really bad. What are we gonna do?
We? Go to the door, ask for the ball back.
Are you serious?
It's my ball, Myrtleback.
You so dead. I'd run away.
Yeah, to Uruguay.
Kiss your life goodbye. Sorry.
Let's go.
Dad.
See you, dude. See ya. Remember me and your well.
Nice life. Some friends you are.
Keep smiling, keep shining.
Hi. Tell him it was an accident. And we can fix the window. Come on. I'll come with you.
Loyalty. Pass it on.
You go first.
A message from the Foundation for a Better Life.
Listen to smoke before you give it a try. Only you. Don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Cause there's nothing very funny about freak-out life. Nothing very nice on a homeless mind. So if a gorgeous force is what you desire, don't play with matches. Don't play with fire.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Fire.
awkward. I'm the awkward silence. You try to avoid me, then there I am again.
But an awkward silence can be a great thing.
Like Kelly here is about to demonstrate.
You haven't really been yourself lately. Are you okay?
Find out how you can help a friend with their mental health at seizetheawkward.org.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
And thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for joining us back here on the Inside Scoop as we close out our conversation with Delegate Garrett McGuire. So you shared with us your education priorities, your budget priorities, your data center thoughts, and transportation. You've been doing a lot in your 53 days.
Yes.
So let us know, what is a day in the life like outside of session for you as a delegate?
Oh, wow. Great question. It's hectic. You know, they call these part-time legislator jobs. I would venture to challenge that. But actually, it's extremely rewarding and fun because I'm out in the community constantly. You know, I've done probably about 15 town halls in session. Communities reaching out saying, hey, we want to know what happened in Richmond. We want to know about you. We want to know what you think of our problem here in this neighborhood. How can you help it? We are constantly being contacted by constituents that need help with state agencies. So we're really able to make a difference in people's lives that way. And then we are, you know, taking care of our families. You know, during session, we're living in Richmond, you know, and so for a father of a 4-year-old and 2-year-old, I want to make sure I'm back and being dad too.
Wow. So what are some of the changes that you want to take, that you're looking forward to for the next upcoming session?
Yeah. A lot. But I'll say, you know, there's a lot of things around mental health I want to tackle. You know, that has continued to be an issue. We are continuing to look at policies to improve how we deliver services for mental health, but also thinking outside of the box on a couple things, taking some ideas from different states. So we'll kind of narrow down and come up with a few good ideas from that. You know, one of the things that was just, I felt like the best part of this job was this past year I passed a bill to require nursing facilities and assisted living facilities to have automatic external defibrillators installed in their buildings. Currently not a requirement, well, as of July 1st it's a requirement, but before that it was not a requirement. And the only reason I knew that is because a constituent came up to me and said, hey, did you know this? I know because my mother died in one, and had there been an AED on site, she would have lived. I said, well, no, I did not know about that, but let's see what we can do. And so I did a bill this year. It passed starting July 1st this past year. They are now required to be installed and staff on site to train them. And I say all of that is I'm always open to ideas. You never know where you're going to get a good idea for a bill. And oftentimes, like I mentioned at the beginning, it's from people's personal experiences. And I haven't had everyone's personal experience. So hearing stories of how people's lives have impacted by bad policies or outdated policies or loopholes, that's something I'm really interested in. And how can we as a state government, how can I as a state legislator make an impact to change that and make sure the next person in line does not feel those negative consequences? So always open to ideas.
Any strides in maternal health or reproductive rights?
Yeah, so this year, we're going to have a pretty significant constitutional amendment on the ballot in November. We're going to have 3.
Yes.
But we were able in the General Assembly session this year to do the final step from our part of it, from the legislature, which was pass a constitutional amendment that will enshrine certain Roe v. Wade protections into our state constitution, which is going to be a significant monumental step for the Commonwealth in ensuring reproductive rights are part of who we are as a Commonwealth. So that's going to be on the ballot. That's the last step, is a public referendum. We're pretty confident that Virginians will see it as an important step forward for women's health and reproductive rights. And then maternal health, you know, I serve on the Select Committee for Rural and Small Town Health. Obviously Fairfax County doesn't really fit into that, but they wanted someone from Fairfax County because they wanted someone that had knowledge of the health system here in a non-rural part, and how can we implement some of those in the rest of the state. And one of the things that we are grappling with and looking at are labor and delivery units. and how far it takes some people in Virginia to get to a labor and delivery unit. Oftentimes being over an hour. And if you're in a situation where your labor and your delivery is not going to be within an hour, what do you do? And so we're looking at that specifically, but also in the whole realm of rural hospitals and where they are going and the financial stress they're feeling right now from cuts on Medicaid. And so I think there's a lot to come on maternal health. We did a lot this past year. My colleague, Delegate Margaret Franklin, did an omnibus bill.
She's been on the show before.
Oh, okay, well, she's probably talked about it, but she was great. Another newbie, and she carried a lot of meaningful legislation around that, ensuring health outcomes are prepared for, and that we are, making sure every community has the right health, getting the right health decisions and have the right health needs that they need.
I think we're in a really interesting time politically, as far as there might be political ideologies that someone may have, but when the rubber hits the road, or when they see how decisions from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue affect their front step, maybe that's an opportunity for them to change perspective. And I'm thinking about, I want to say it's in VA 5. But like there was a hospital that shut down because of the impacts of health funding. Like they no longer have a hospital. So I'm wondering if you're hearing from maybe some of your constituents on the other side of the aisle.
Good question. I think folks that represent rural areas, at least in the state legislature, have a keen sense of that reality, and they realize we need to do something. And also realize that there's only so much we can do at the state level because Medicaid is largely funded by the federal government, and that's where a lot of rural hospitals get the funds they need to continue operating. There is going to have to be pressure to Washington and the White House of, hey, our people are struggling out here. We're closing hospitals. We just got a report that there are 18 hospitals in Virginia on the cusp of closing. So that's 18 communities that will no longer have.
How many hospitals did
18.
You say? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so that's a significant number of healthcare options for people in rural parts of the state. So, but we're looking at innovative ways to combat that too. Telehealth. We're looking at Rural Health Transformation Fund that we got $181 million for. How can we transform some of the things we're doing at the state level to optimize who these hospitals can serve, where they can serve them, how they can serve them. So we're going to continue to look at it and figure out how we can improve this situation, but it's certainly going to need some federal assistance as well.
Absolutely. One of the activities at the Fairfax County Democratic Committee that they're looking to do is to essentially send volunteers to these areas to say, hey, did you consider how this decision might affect you? Here's some more information if you are, pro-labor, or if you are having trouble with your, health care and Medicare and Medicaid. So I think that just drives home the point of making sure that you're an informed voter, making sure that your neighbors are informed, and because how we vote, that makes a difference.
Yeah. No, informed voters are so important, and knowing where the candidates fall on not only the issues that matter to you, because I think when we say that, what are the issues that matter to you, it often rises to the big politically, hot topic button issues.
Yeah.
But Medicaid, right?
Right.
Maybe not something somebody thinks about every day if they're on it, or if they might go on it at some point. That is an extremely important thing. That's health insurance, and we know how impactful not having health insurance can be on someone's life. So we want to make sure everyone's informed.
Absolutely. So Delegate McGuire, with the 2 minutes left, how can folks get in contact with you if they have any questions, if they have any concerns?
Yeah. No, feel free to reach out. My website is garrettmcguire.com. You can contact me there. My House of Delegates email is delgmcguire@house.virginia.gov. And I feel like I'm pretty out and about in the community, so if you see me, come by, say hi, tell me what's on your mind, or if you've got a great bill idea. So first bill I got signed into law by the governor was the bill I was talking about earlier with AEDs. So again, such an impact people can make in the way we come up with legislation in this state. It's pretty cool to see.
Absolutely. And your phone number is on your website.
Yeah,
too,
804-698-1017. We'll route back up here to Northern Virginia, but that's our Richmond landline number.
Perfect. So people can go to your website, they can email you, they can call you. They have no excuse not to contact you.
No, plenty of people have found me already. I guarantee you, and I feel confident others can as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are really fortunate to live in a country where folks have access to their elected officials. So thank you for the work that you do.
No problem. Well, thank you for having me. This has been an extremely fun, informative conversation. So
absolutely. Okay. So as many of us here in Virginia prepare to vote in our respective primaries, I want to leave you with a thought about American democracy. Historians often describe our democracy as an experiment. That's because when America was founded 250 years ago, no one knew whether a nation governed by its people rather than a king could actually survive. Our Constitution introduced checks and balances, divided power among 3 branches of government, and gave some citizens the right to elect their representatives. Unfortunately, this experiment began with a serious contradiction. While America declared that all people were created equal, it enslaved Black people, displaced indigenous people, denied women political power, and reserved voting rights primarily for white men. But throughout American history, it's been the most vulnerable of us to push our country closer to its democratic ideals. Abolition, Reconstruction, women's suffrage, the labor movement, and the civil rights movement were instances of course corrections on our journey toward a more perfect union. To this day, the American experiment continues to ask a single question. Can a diverse nation share political power fairly, protect the rights of all people, and resolve its disagreements without abandoning democracy? The answer to that question will not come from the Constitution alone. It has to come from us, from what we are willing to defend, what we are willing to challenge, and whether we are willing to use the power we have to protect democracy. So, as we prepare to vote, remember that we are not merely choosing candidates, we are helping to decide what kind of democracy this experiment will produce, and whether government of, by, and for the people will endure. The American experiment continues tomorrow. The question is whether we will show up and do our part. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Inside Scoop. We have enjoyed you. Please make sure you join us next week as we continue our conversation on democracy, policy, politics, and community organizing. We will see you next week.